Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Guys Who Stare at Stats. Cade Kennedy with you alongside Tyler Riggs. Week 14 in the books. The regular season has come and gone, and it is officially December now, the end of November. And it's always an interesting time, Tyler, where, I'm sad that the regular season has come to a close. We've had a lot of fun going through it, week by week. But at the same time, the postseason's here, conference championship games, the new 12-team playoff. I'm excited to see how this all works. You've got the signing day coming up. This is a major week for college football, that kind of transition week, if you will. It's going to be a lot of fun. As always, before we get into things fully, feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. Any other games that we don't talk about that you want to get into, what you disagree with us on, what you agree with us on. We always do want to know. And of course, at 94 subscribers, we gained one. That's good. Hey, accomplishing something. Trying to get to that triple digits, hit 100 before the end of the year. We've got 30 days to do it now, folks. Let's see if we can get there. But as always, we do appreciate anything. Any comment you want to make, even if it's been like, this guy is dumb, I'll take it. I'll take it at this point. I'll take that. But, anything that helps is always a good thing, I would think. But, Tyler, we've got to start with Michigan and Ohio State. And that's why I joke about this guy's dumb, because I'll save my major opinion for Ohio State when we get into a segment later on down the line that you'll be able to see in the description. It'll have the markings and everything, the timestamps, if you will. But this is a game where if you would have told me that Michigan was going to be a 20-point underdog, they were going to have multiple interceptions, and they were going to have 62 passing yards, I would have said this is going to be one of the greatest days to be an Ohio State fan I could think of. And it just did not happen. It was an old school Big Ten style rock fight where you have to be able to find a way to run the ball. You have to control the line of scrimmage. You have to gut this thing out in the trenches. And that's the one thing Michigan has tried to build their identity on this season. And this is a beat-up Michigan team, too. Didn't have their best player on either side of the ball. And they came in here and found a way to win this game.
Yeah, big gutsy win for Michigan. No doubt about it, right? Look, into rivalry week, you figure, okay, this is Michigan's Super Bowl this season, right? It hasn't been the season they envisioned. You want something, you want to end it on the right way. And boy, no better way to do it than go into the shoe, beat Ohio State, get a brawl, plant the flag. We'll talk about that later, I'm sure, a little bit more. But yeah, couldn't ask for better if you're a Michigan fan, despite the ugliness. Like you said, classic Big Ten game in that sense. And man, what a fight! And ultimately, kudos to Michigan for pulling it off. That took some guts, no question.
Yeah, what a fight! Literally, both during the game and after the game. But you look at the team stats here, and I always go to this, and you look at the amount of turnovers; they're the same. Yardage-wise, just about the same. I always bring this up because it's a key to how you win this type of thing. At least it's important to me, at least. You look at time of possession. Michigan able to control the clock 33-35 to 26-25, and that is kind of what Michigan had to do in this game. If there was any chance that Michigan was going to keep this close, in my mind, not even, let alone win the thing, but just keep it close, they were going to have to do something equivalent to that. Davis Warren did not have a good day. 9 for 16, 62 yards, 2 interceptions. That's not a good day by any standard for anyone. But what Michigan was able to do was the one thing they've been able to do somewhat all year, and that's run the ball. Averaging 4 yards a carry. Alex Orji, they brought him in for a couple packages. 3 carries, 32 yards. Had the big run for 29 yards. Other 2 carries, had nothing doing there. Kalel Mullings, though, 116 on the ground, gets the touchdown. He was the guy. If Michigan was going to find a way to win this thing, they were going to have to just rely on the legs of Mullings and see what they could do. And let's flip it to the other side. What Ohio State do in the ground game? Travion Henderson, 10 carries, 21 yards, easiest average you can get, 2.1. Quinshon Judkins, absolutely nothing there, 3.8. Yes, better than Mullings, but that's not how Ohio State wants to play. They don't want to cram it down your throat like Michigan would want to. And Will Howard, Tyler, we talked about this how many times with Ohio State this year. When you have a slow start, you've got to get your quarterback going. And we've seen Will Howard enough, both at Kansas State and here at Ohio State, that he's always due for one head-scratching game. Not just a play or two that we've seen at times this season from him, but one game where you just don't understand what's going on out there. And he picked the absolute one game you cannot do it in for Ohio State fans. You can't do it in the game of the season.
Yeah, and we both, I think, could not necessarily been calling it, but we kept warning, hey, this team's going to go as far as Will Howard's going to go. If he falls off, it could get ugly. And this is one of those games where, sure enough, he just was not there. He looked really average, not great. And that's a credit partly to this Michigan defense. We talked about how good throughout the year this Michigan defense is because we see similar vibes, with Oklahoma, where it's like it's clear this defense is good. You just don't have the support. And unfortunately for Ohio State, boy, did it cost them in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at the Michigan defensive tackles for loss here and there, kind of showing the stats on the screen. You look at interceptions, of course, got to credit Amir Hall, Makari Page for both getting the big picks that they had. But it was one of those where Michigan, I mean, it's crazy to say this, that they just bullied Ohio State. That doesn't feel like that should have happened here. That doesn't feel like that should happen ever unless Ohio State's playing the, without a shadow of a doubt, number one team in the country that year where everyone can tell that it's going to happen. It's just a weird feeling. And I want to kind of get into this more later about how I feel about Ohio State this year. But you look at what the Buckeyes are facing now, 10-2. Their 2 losses to Oregon and Michigan. You have no Big Ten title to show for it. You spent $20 million, allegedly, whatever you want to say, the $20 million on NIL. Where is this team going? Yes, they're going to be in the playoffs. And I don't want to get into the what-if game too much here, but I will throw this one out. If they get into the playoff and lose immediately, what precedent is that going to set for Ohio State fans? Because these people are, I don't want to say they're not normal, but they aren't. They're one of the top blue bloods. If you think of the blue bloods, they are maybe the bluest blood, and that they are not used to handling 3 losses well. That's not who Ohio State is. That doesn't happen to them ever. And I'd been, kind of warning even back in the preseason when we talked about this that, hey, if they don't win a national title this year, Ryan Day might be gone. And it went from the fringe people wanting Day gone after they lost to Michigan last year to it seems like if you talk to an Ohio State fan, even today, with a day to cool off, with a day to go over and think about, okay, what did we do wrong? What do we need to bounce back from? I think a majority of the fan base now, they want him out.
Yeah, and it goes back to that, what you were talking about, that rightfully, to a degree, the belief for the fans that, hey, we are the top dog. And if we're not playing for championships, it's not good enough to go compete and be in the playoffs and say, oh, hey, we had a great season. No, these two people want trophies. That's what they expect. Fair or not, you do have to examine now, I think, regardless of how the season finishes for Ohio State, barring them going and winning the title, that you have to go, okay, is Ryan Day the guy to legitimately get you there? I want to kind of equate it, Cade, to the Oklahoma City Thunder, because that's, close to the ground for us, obviously. You're not a Thunder fan, but you've seen them enough.
Yeah, I've been to enough games.
Yeah. And so, for me, I always think of Scott Brooks. Scott Brooks was a great coach, had a lot of talent on his team, and it was evident that, he could go win games with the Russell Westbrooks, Kevin Durant's of the world, that. But it did at some point become, hey, wait a minute. Why aren't we winning a title? You had all this talent. Why can't we go win? And so that causes the Thunder ultimately move on. Now, the move didn't pay off, so it is maybe a little bit of a cautionary tale to Ohio State fans to say, hey, just because you think he's not the guy to go win it for you, be careful, because it's not easy to go find that guy. They don't grow on trees.
Exactly. They don't. But it's one of those. We'll discuss this a little bit later on in the show because I think we'll have a lot more to say about it then when we get to the one segment we call Fraud Alert. I'm going to say it right now. That's where Ohio State's going to get brought up again if you want to jump ahead to that. But we've got another game to get to, Texas and Texas A&M. It's been a long time coming, Tyler, since these two have played. It's been 13 years since Justin Tucker sent the Aggies off to the SEC, and Texas came in with a message. Texas is back. The big brother is back in the house. It's not going to be fun for Texas A&M and it was not a fun first half for Texas A&M. The Longhorns came out and they showed, who they are. They showed the team that, we talked about how many times have I said they're the most efficient defense in the country. Defense is always going to travel in a big game like this. Texas was able to absolutely just shut A&M down. Their only score came from the 93-yard pick six if you're Texas A&M. They couldn't even get an offensive touchdown in this game. And then Texas A&M gets a blocked punt in the mid of the fourth quarter. And you start to think, okay, this is that kind of rivalry game. I'm going to say it, and it might make a lot of sense to us. It might not make a lot of sense to SEC people who watch this. This is the Texas's equivalent of Bedlam. This is exactly what this is, where if you play it at College Station, a fluky thing or two, regardless of whether it actually is or not, it's going to feel that way to a Texas fan that, okay, of course they got a 93-yard pick six. Of course they blocked a punt, and a game that we've controlled the entire time is about to become a one-possession game. But when push came to shove, and the Texas defense had to make a play on a 4th and goal, what did Texas's D-line do? They swallowed it up. They said, not today. We're going to Atlanta to play Georgia for the SEC title. Both teams had 2 turnovers, but the yardage difference tells a lot of the story here. 461 to 248. Texas nearly 200 yards more, 193 in advantage of the Horns. Time of possession nearly 35 to 25 in Texas's favor as well. Why did that happen? Because the Texas rushing attack came to play. I mean, you look at Contrivian Wisner, I should say, just amazing day. 186 on the ground on 33 carries. As phenomenal of a performance you could have in a game like this against a good A&M defense. Don't let me make you believe that A&M's some terrible middle-of-the-road team. They're still a good defense. Mike Elko is a good defensive coach. This is just what Texas was able to do to them.
Yeah, and I think the biggest story out of this and why people will say, well, Texas may be a little bit of a fraud, right, in terms of their actual college football championship chances. Because there's been a lot of times this season where they've had a game like this where it doesn't look perfect. They don't go out and wow you, but with how this season started for them, especially in the preseason, losing what was going to be some potential contributing players in that, running back room, and to come out and run the ball the way they have in control games, the way they have in a conference where you need to be able to do that. It's been impressive. That I will give them. And you can make what you want about Quinn Ewers. We have those conversations about him the same way we do with Carson Beck and Will Howard. But at the end of the day, this Texas team is going to play good defense. They're going to run the ball, and they're going to force you to try to deal with them on a physical level. A lot of teams just haven't been able to do it. Outside that Georgia game, a lot of teams have been, just haven't been able to match that.
Exactly. And I mean, you're right on it about the Texas offense that Quinn Ewers, he's still banged up. And that's just going to be who he is this year. There's not much you can do about it at this point. He's not going to be at 100%. He doesn't look great out there at times. But I liked what Coach Sark was able to do in terms of bringing Arch Manning in. Yes, it was only a little package or two, but just to bring him in, get a touchdown run out of that. Okay, you need a little bit of mobility. Go to Arch. See what he can bring you in a game like this. Just a little bit of a test to see what A&M reacts to on a different look there. I like that call a lot personally. I think this is kind of the identity Texas needs to be at this point, that yes, Ewers is going to have that ability to beat you. He can go deep if he needs to or just beat you with checkdowns. But we're going to make the run game a big factor. And keep in mind, Texas had a lot of running back injuries at the start of the year too. That was a big thing coming into this season, that what is Texas going to look like? To see how they've continued to evolve, just how many times they've had to do it this season, is nothing short of impressive.
Yeah, and I think that point you make about start figuring out kind of how to, put Arch out there in a way where you've got to at least think about him. You got a game plan for him a little bit. It may not be, but more than 5 plays, but it is smart because he's talented and he's got a good enough arm to be able to make teams say, okay, if he's out there, he's not just maybe going to run it. He might try to do something through the air. So anything, and a coach will tell you, anything you could put on film to worry an opponent, no matter how much or little you use it, the more time they have to spend game planning for it is good, because that takes away from them trying to look deeper into what is your bread and butter, right? And when they can't focus on that as much and have to focus on maybe gimmicky or not, some of these other packages, that is something that offensive coach will tell you, hey, we love to be able to say that, we take away some time from them on that.
Absolutely. And for Texas A&M, I mean, this is one of those games that you think of all the hype that this game had a few weeks ago. And something, I can't help but think about what did that loss to Auburn do to this team coming into this game? That you had that big, you're still playing for a shot at the SEC title game, but I can't help but think a little bit of their confidence got taken away losing that game at 4 overtimes at Auburn, going into this thinking, okay, this is going to be an entirely different challenge. They got hyped up for it. They got riled up for it, whatever you want to say. There was a lot of fun things. If you followed the Texas A&M University Police Department Twitter account, you saw a lot of fun things there. You saw a lot of people trying to find their ways around College Station to get here or have a little bit of fun. Too much fun the wrong way, I guess you could say. But Texas A&M
Yeah.
just so many things went wrong in this game, and you're going to look back at it and go, man, we put ourselves, despite having a terrible game at times, we put ourselves in position to make plays. I know you don't want to take a moral victory away from losing 17-7 to your rival, your big rival. You don't want to do that. But that's where Texas A&M is. And even though, we talked about at the beginning of the year, this A&M team had the potential to be something special. It's another year of 8-4 and another year of being a top 25 team for the most part, but just not being able to put it together when you absolutely had to.
Yeah, and that's probably the part that's going to sting the most for Texas A&M fans is that while Jimbo's not there, again, we talk about the ghost of Jimbo. It's another season where you feel like the potential for what this team could be wasted. And that's a tough pill to swallow at the end of the season sometimes.
Absolutely. You didn't think the Texas 8-4 memes would come back, but here they are again, Tyler. Sometimes it just happens that way. But we've got
the universe takes care of itself.
Yeah, but we've got to switch things up here, going over to the Palmetto Bowl, South Carolina and Clemson. Another really fun defensive game. And that was kind of the key through most of these. These were fun defensive battles that just, you get your mettle tested in games like this. In South Carolina, my goodness, Lenore Sellers, 164 through the air. And that was his worst stat of the two. Had 166 yards on the ground on 16 carries. He was just a guy that was not going to be stopped. And we don't look at this too often, but you look at ESPN's win probability chart, and sometimes this tells you, this is the most normal South Carolina game possible, where Clemson has, I kid you not, let me roll over it exactly here. They had about, I'd say, an 80% chance of winning this game with 1:18 to go. It was a false start that had changed things around. Clemson was going to get the ball back. They marched down the field late and throw an interception. After South Carolina scores with 1:08 left, looked like Clemson could maybe get the stop. Didn't happen. It's a 20-yard run by Sellers, and Clemson just could not get the job done. You had two things you could have done. You either go for the win or you go for overtime, and Clemson chose the mysterious third option of turning the ball over. And sometimes games break like that, unfortunately, but it's always a bitter pill to swallow.
It is, and I just want to say, Lenore Sellers, I watched this game in its entirety. My God, did he look like Superman at times out there? Multiple times in this game where he was able to pull the Houdini act, get out of what looked to be sure sacks by the Clemson defense and just make a play. I mean, that, if you're going to have any trait for your quarterback, I call it the Mahomes trait, a guy that could sit there and take a bad situation and at the end of the play make you go, hey, that could have been a lot worse, and a lot of times can make magic out of it, right? And Lenore Sellers has that. He showed it off in this game in a big way. Showed that, hey, when you need a rabbit out of a hat, he can do that every once in a while, and that's huge, especially for a redshirt freshman like that. Answered the huge moment. Was he perfect all day? No, but I tell you what, he definitely saved South Carolina's bacon on multiple plays.
He did, and he had to. I mean, you look at Rocket Sanders, 60 yards on 18 carries. Clemson's defense was dialed in on that. They made sure that Sanders went absolutely nowhere. It turned into only one guy is going to beat us, and it was the one guy that beat them in Sellers. And then you look at it on the Clemson side of things, Phil Moffitt, kind of one of those power backs, has the ability to just grind and wear you down. 20 carries for 66 yards, only 3.3. You kind of figured that would happen against South Carolina's defensive line. But Cade Klubnik, he had a good game. 24 for 36, 280. Yes, had the interception there, but 2 rushing touchdowns, 62 yards. Kind of the surprising stat of the day, if you will, that Klubnik nearly was going to have more rushing yards than Moffitt. You wouldn't expect that for a game like this, but either way, just a really fun defensive game. And what Shane Beamer's continued to build at South Carolina and what they have, especially for the future with Sellers going forward, they're going to be tough to deal with for a long time, Tyler.
Yeah, they very well have that potential, and we've talked about on the show plenty where it's new age, right? If you could go to the portal and sell a couple big commits on, hey, jump on for a year and see what happens. Having a dynamic quarterback and a coach that is willing to, show some grit like that, that could go a long ways for your program.
It absolutely could. And we've got to switch gears because I've talked about, a lot of fun defensive games. It's time to switch things up and go to the shootout in the ACC. Syracuse down 21-0 in the second quarter. 21-0, 12:57 to go until halftime. It looked like Miami was finally going to get a nice, pleasant day and go into the ACC title game with SMU, but the Orange had other plans, Tyler. It completely flips the script, and this turns into the ball game of the middle of the afternoon, which I really didn't think that would happen. But hey, sometimes the ACC just decides, we exist, guys. We can have fun games too. And that's what this was. If you did not watch this game, go back and watch the highlights of this thing at least. This was a blast to cover, a blast just to, the fact that you get to see fun games like this. A Syracuse team that everyone had kind of written off, they're 9-3. Kyle McCord is still a good quarterback out there. It's not the Carrier Dome anymore, but it always will be to me. That place was loud. It was a fun environment to see, and I'm just impressed by Syracuse. That's mainly my takeaway here. Syracuse stepping up, just coming back in this thing, winning it, and the coaching decision at the end by Mario Cristobal. You have Cam Ward, who's arguably the best quarterback in the country this year, and you're going to kick a field goal to be down 4 with 3:42, knowing darn well that Syracuse is probably going to run out the clock. How your defense had been shaky the entire second half, and you choose to do that anyway. I don't get it. Mario Cristobal's made coaching mistakes before. He certainly will make them again. Every coach does. But I just do not understand kicking the field goal. 27-yarder, by the way. This wasn't some deep field goal where, maybe you just try to kick it here. This was close. I don't get it, Tyler. I really don't.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will tell you they're scratching their heads on that one, and rightfully so. But to me, it just more is confusing at the sense of you've got, like I said, arguably one of the best quarterbacks in the country. It may be the most dynamic, and you don't trust him just to go make a big play. Whether he makes that play or not, at least give the man the chance to say, hey, we're either going to win it on your shoulders or lose it, and that's okay. Because that's what he's there for, to make those type of plays.
And on a day where Xavier Restrepo and Jacoby George, look at this. Combined 15 catches for, nearly 270 yards, it looks like. Yeah. And I can't do math this well at 10:45 at night, or else I'd count it out for you. But just 2 receivers that were torching Syracuse all day, and you just refuse to do anything with it. I don't get it. But for Syracuse, once again, Kyle McCord, 380, 3 touchdowns, absolutely just lit up Miami the entire day. Miami's defense has been bad all year, and this was another example of it. But McCord, just been a fun story to watch, Tyler.
Yeah, he's another guy that, there's times where it looks like he's pushed a little too hard, thinking that, hey, I've got to be the guy for this team. But when he does get into a rhythm, he's been really fun to watch, and he's had quite a few of those games this year, even in losses where you thought, man, he was just slinging it. So kudos to him for that. Big win for Syracuse, and 9 wins for the Orange. That's big time.
What Coach Brown's been able to do up there, Fran Brown, he's been having a great time. once again, another team excited to see what they can continue to build on next year. Syracuse, we'd say it how many times with Dino Babers teams up there where it'd be, okay, they're 4-0, 5-0, they look good. And then they'd play a close game against Clemson, and then the season would fizzle away from them. That didn't happen this year, obviously. Syracuse, I would think they'd be ranked in the college football playoff rank. I feel like you have to rank them at this point. 9-3 had the big Miami win. You've got to rank the Orange. We all support the Orange here.
For what it's worth, I know it doesn't mean everything, and the AP did rank them indeed. So we'll see if the College Football Playoff Committee follows suit. They've kind of gone close this year in terms of little differences here and there. So I imagine Syracuse, yes, will have pretty good case to be ranked come Tuesday night.
I would think so. But one more game to get to. Finally going to the Big 12. The final game of the games of the week to keep an eye on. Farmageddon delivered again. When's the last time Farmageddon wasn't a fun game? It's one of those that, it had everything. We had touchdowns. We had weird Big 12 ref magic. That happens anytime there's a Big 12 game. That's just a part of the conference. I'm sorry. But Iowa State scored 5 points in a quarter, Tyler. And that's something that, to me, baseball numbers in a football game for one quarter is always going to be funny. When you get a safety and a field goal off of said safety, I'm always going to enjoy that. I just enjoy seeing the weird crooked number there. It brings me much joy, as you can clearly tell. But Kansas State, just 2 turnovers in this game. Iowa State controls the time of possession. You round it out about 35-25. And how many times have we talked about Iowa State this year, a team that just refuses to quit? No matter what the situation looks like, they refuse to die. And this is a game where they were never in a big hole or anything. But Rocco Becht, if you would have said he's going to go 13 of 35, 137, and Avery Johnson's going to have an okay performance, 12 for 28, not the greatest, but 220 and 3 touchdowns. And a day where DJ Giddens was still getting 5 yards a carry, Avery Johnson nearly there as well, 4.9. I'd have said, oh boy, this is a classic Farmageddon. K-State finds a way to ruin Iowa State's dreams again. And again, Iowa State couldn't get to double-digit wins. But it didn't happen because this Iowa State team really does feel special. They finally hit that double-digit mark. And I know for some people you're thinking, okay, 10-2, that's a really great season. You have to understand, this has never happened to Iowa State before, ever. They've never won 10 games before, ever. This is the best team they've ever had when you look at it record-wise because of that. What Matt Campbell has continued to build, and I'm going to say it right now, I think he's going to, and this, I don't think this is that bold of a take. I think he's going to be the Bill Snyder of Iowa State. I think he's going to be that guy that stays for a long time and makes Iowa State a reputable program that in 10, 20 years you'll look at, and there'll be a whole new generation that goes, yeah, Iowa State's always been good. What do you mean they were terrible? What do you mean they were really bad? That doesn't make any sense. Iowa State's always been, okay, 6-6 or 7-5 every once in a while. That just feels like what he can continue to build here. We've talked about it a lot on this show. The three-headed monster attack you get in the run game sometimes, whether it be Abu Sama, whether it be Carson Henson, or sometimes Rocco Becht takes off and runs with it. He did that. He got a touchdown. This Iowa State team's been so much fun to watch this year.
Yeah, and it hadn't always been pretty, but, again, what a weird makeup for a 10-win Iowa State team. You would have thought with, Purdy there and Montgomery there and some of that other great talent they've had that they would have been able to do it, but got to be a big weight off Matt Campbell's shoulders, right? Because it had been so close under his tenure to be able to say, hey, we were among some of the best in the nation at times. So definitely huge for him. Credit to him. And I'm interested to see, and he's held it off so far. You make the point about him maybe being the Bill Snyder of this place, right? He's a guy that just for whatever reason doesn't feel like he's ever going to go pro. He's had some chances. There was a time where he was the name for potentially to go get an NFL job. So I'm curious, how are people going to respond to that? You want some stability in today's college football world. As a player, I think that still holds some weight. So can they capitalize on this? Who knows?
I would think so. I think in the Big 12, where it stands now, you can look at, a chaotic conference. The last few years, you can look at Iowa State and say, hey, we've been consistent. whether that be 6-6 or 7-5 or an 8-4, maybe even a 10-2. We are continuing to improve every single year. We might have a drop off every once in a while, not be, we'll be an okay football team, but we're going to continue to be good, sometimes great. And with how the Big 12 is, there's a lot of, we call it the Conference of Chaos now for a reason. So many weird things happen every single week. You're going to have a puncher's chance. Iowa State's going to be in that conversation now. I think the momentum for Iowa State's going to continue to keep on going up.
Definitely has a chance to, because like I said, I think the conference is absolutely wide open pretty much year to year. I don't know if there's ever going to be a superpower that emerges. Could be wrong, but there's enough really good programs in there that it seemingly set itself up to always be a good fight.
Exactly. And that works out well. The three programs we thought would run the thing this year, Kansas State had the best of them, and they went. Yeah, they went 8-4, and that was the best of the big three. Utah, Oklahoma State, nowhere to be found. But it is finally time to get to Champions of Life of the Week and Fraud Alert, starting with Champions of Life of the Week. Maybe my favorite segment we get to do on this show. And I've got to start with just rivalry week in general, Tyler. I mean, you would talk about Champions of Life of the Week. This is going to sound really bad when I say it. We had 11 fights this week. We had multiple flag plants, a lot of passion, a lot of hostility. You don't see that really anywhere else. You don't see it in any other college sport. You don't see it in professional sports. The idea that, these college kids are out here just fighting for just their team, fighting for, their university, fighting for whatever you want to call it. Seeing so many people get invested in a big time game. And yeah, it does get ugly at times. You never want to see these fights happen to the point where cops get involved and start pepper spraying people and things like that. That's never fun. But just the passion you see in stuff like this, the chaotic games you get, things like the Egg Bowl. You think about how many crazy Egg Bowls we had in a row. Even this year, it was wild. Rivalry week always brings out the best in teams. Games that sometimes should never be close are. Perfect example is the one I've got on screen right now, Michigan-Ohio State this week. Should have not have been close. If these two teams weren't rivals, I don't think it would have been close. But because that game means so much to both sides, you get weird games like that. It happens in every rivalry, and to get all of them on one major weekend, nearly all of them, is always so special. And, I hate that we always have to wait till the end of the year, but that buildup is always worth it every single time.
Oh, it is. And, it's a win and champion of life because we were told this was going to be non-existent in the new age of college football, right?
Right.
Like, that's what we were told. But here we are, and you could argue the passion is ever more present because if you're a Michigan, okay, season hasn't been great, but we have a chance to really go in there and kind of put a damper on Ohio State trying to march towards a playoff, right? And yeah, they're going to make the playoff, but boy, you put a lot of question marks around them now that they got to figure out in a couple of weeks. And on top of that, yeah, you lose some rivalries because of late realignment. We know, but you get to create some new ones. You get some old ones back, Texas A&M, and you get some new age hate. So there's nothing wrong with that. I think it was definitely a great week for college football because of that alone.
Exactly. And then I've got to get to my other champion of life of the week, and it's UCF. And you're wondering probably, didn't UCF lose to Utah? How does that even work? What do you mean they're a champion of life of the week? I'll tell you why. Because Gus Malzahn was going to get fired after this game for losing to this Utah team a Utah team that sometimes doesn't even feel like they have a pulse. They just seem to exist and then fade away for a week and then come back into existence to play a game. But Gus Malzahn did not get fired because he resigned to go become the offensive coordinator at Florida State. So who no longer has to pay a buyout? That's right, UCF. They survive. We'll see what the Knights do. Maybe they'll get a good coach out of this. I've been hearing some rumors about old G.J. Kinney might be taking the UCF job. That's the rumor. And, of course, by the time this comes out, that might be completely different. But as of right now, if they make that hire, UCF could be looking in an entirely different direction and might have just gotten away with everything.
Yeah, no, that's huge. Not have to pay a buyout to a coach that you thought was going to be really good. And he just kind of skates his way over to Florida State. Good luck with that one, Florida State. But
Hey,
man,
I hope
big
they
big
enjoy
time for
once again.
UCF. I agree with
Yeah, I hope they enjoy at Florida State once again not having a good offense. I am so sorry,
you.
Florida State fans.
Oof, oof.
I don't know what you did to deserve that. You would think your punishment would have ended after going 2-10, but apparently, the football gods have other plans in store for you. I'm so sorry.
Apparently.
But Tyler, who do you have as your champions of life of the week? You already told me, but I still don't understand it.
Yeah, this one's kind of similar to yours in the UCF vein. My champions of life this week is fans of the Oklahoma State Cowboys. And you're going, wait a
Now,
minute.
how does
This is
that
a
work?
three. How does that work? They're a 3-9 team. You get lambasted by Colorado to end the season, and what has been by far and away, no questions, no doubt, the worst season under the tenure of Mike Gundy. There's no questions about that. Even back to the I'm a man, I'm 40. Can't top this season. It's been truly awful. Gundy's called people poor, broke as far as those that support the
Which,
program.
by the way,
It
is
has
definitely how
been,
you win over a fan base when you're having a bad year.
man, it has been bad. Now, how does that equate to a fan base being champions of life despite all that mess? Because it's over. And for the first time in a long time, and Cade, we've been around Oklahoma State fans. We know quite a few.
Yeah.
There's never been seemingly a happy marriage between themselves and Gundy. There's times where you could tell the fans are like, man, we're glad we got Gundy. There's plenty of other times, even in their highest of highs, they're like, man, sometimes I just don't know if Mike's the guy, right? And it's been tough because he's brought them to unprecedented stability in his tenure. They have been, since he coached there, started coaching there, a program that's consistently winning games. They are in the top 10 since he started coaching in terms of wins from the time since he took over till now. That's great. You know, if you're a fan, you can say what you want. We'll talk about more when we come to Ryan Day, but you want that stability, right? You want to be able to know, hey, no matter the season, we're going to have a chance to win some ball games and be competing for conference championships. And Mike Gundy has delivered that. And he's OSU's guy, right? He was Boone Pickens' guy.
Exactly.
The guy who played there was also, when he played there, part of probably one of their best successes they had in a while. But Oklahoma State fans are changing his life because we may see for the first time legitimate change come to a program for a fan base that has wanted it for probably what the last half decade now.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that it's seemingly Gundy might have gotten a little stale a few years back, and so for a fan base that's kind of been yearning for, hey, maybe we need to look at changing things up. Legitimate change might come now because of how awful this season has been. Not only is it over, but you may finally get some of that change you've been looking for.
Absolutely. And to put some more things into perspective for Oklahoma State, this was the first time they did not win a single conference game since 1994. It had been 30 years. The Big Eight was still around the last time that happened.
Yeah.
And the other stat that blew my mind, you think about Neil Brown, who just got fired as the head coach of West Virginia. Mike Gundy has had a worse conference record the last 4 years than Neil Brown has.
Yeah.
Oklahoma State's in a position where if it wasn't for Ollie Gordon last year, I don't know what would have happened this year, because Oklahoma State would have probably been in the same boat of a 6-win, 5-win type of team, bringing everyone back. And I mean, just the whole idea that we all got, I don't want to say we all got duped, but once you figured out Ollie Gordon and made Alan Bowman the guy you had to stop, it's Alan Bowman. That's all you have to say is it's Alan Bowman. He's not going to beat you single-handedly. Everyone figured that out. Oklahoma State's offensive line didn't really show any signs of improvement, and the entire thing imploded on itself. It still boggles my mind how they beat Arkansas the way they did.
I know a couple Oklahoma State fans that would tell you the same. They're like, "There's no way we should beat Arkansas," but we did.
Yeah, it's one of
And that was
those
kind of the beginning of the end. I think they realized, hey, we might not be a great team this year.
Yeah, it turned into, okay, well, surely the Big 12 will be chaotic enough that Oklahoma State would still find its way in the mix, but it just did not happen. Just an absolutely bizarre season, but I've enjoyed seeing the Oklahoma State fans, at least on social media, just saying, hey, I can't read this OSU. OSU will post the score or something. They go, hey, I'm too poor to read this. What does it say? Someone help me out. I can't figure it out.
Yeah, that's the thing. The noise might be finally loud enough to cause some change.
I would think.
We'll see how it's handled.
I would think you'd have to at least fire your coordinators at the bare minimum. I would
see. Is that enough? Is that enough? That's my thing. Like,
that's the problem.
I don't know if it's enough.
And it's the same thing we'll get into, down the line, as coaching searches kind of continue. We might have a video just about the carousel in general at some point. But just the idea, and that's going to be the main question, is it enough? And I don't think it is for Oklahoma State. I think it's at the point where you have to fire Gundy. He's kind of a dinosaur, one of those guys that doesn't really want to do all the NIL, doesn't want to have to go through the transfer portal and all that. I think it's time to just, hey, you're going to be the legend that made Oklahoma State the most competitive it's been since Barry Sanders and Thurman Thomas were there. You've got your statue. You've got your fame. You'll be remembered as one of the guys who put Oklahoma State on the map. Go retire. Go enjoy your life.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to. If there's ever a scenario where you'll see a coach, quote unquote, retire, it might be more of a, hey, we don't want to fire you, so please step away. Kind of Mac Brown style, right? With North Carolina, where they tried to go, hey, can you just, announce you're resigning or step away, and that way it looks, mutual. And he wouldn't do it. He said, well, I have no plans to leave. And so they had to finally say, yeah, sorry, bud, you're gone. And you hate to see it for a coaching legend, but Gundy may suffer that same fate this year.
Absolutely. And so I believe you had one more champion of life to get to, Tyler.
I did not. That was my only champion of life.
You did not?
Oh, wait, no. Gosh, we did it again. Where I did. We did it again. Yes. And I wrote it down. I just realized I wrote it down, looked at it.
I was about to say, I'm looking at my tabs here, be like, there's no other place where this game would go.
I'm blanking. I'm sorry.
Okay. It's
I'm
okay.
Sorry. You got so deep into the Gundiness it got me. Anyways.
Yeah. Sometimes you talk about the mullet too much.
Right? Yeah, it kind of blends. That's the big point.
It does.
My true champion life, if you will, this week would be Indiana. It's like, hey, you already did that, but they did exactly what I told you to do. Go murder Purdue, secure their spot. And on top of that, they got a little extra chaos to really put them firm in. Indiana, they're probably going to get to host a first-round game now, despite
they very well could
by Ohio State. So kudos to Kurt Signetti. You made everybody forget about the beatdown this week because you went and took it to Purdue. Purdue has been, bullied this year by the Big Ten. So Champions life, Indiana, getting to be able to say, hey, we're 11-1, put us in and let us host playoff game.
There you go. Anytime you could beat your rival 66-0, you absolutely jump on that opportunity. You get Ryan Walters fired.
Pain out on that one.
Yeah. It was a snow game, too. That's always fun. Listen, snow games, best games. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But it is finally time to look at fraud alert. And Tyler, I believe we are on the same boat as this one. You look at fraud alert, it has to be Ohio State this week. It just has to. You cannot lose to this Michigan team. Ryan Day now 1-4 against Michigan. No Big Ten title. $20 million in NIL money down the drain. What does Ohio State come to? And that sounds really weird to say, but for Ohio State fans, you're 10-2. You're going to be in the playoffs, yes, but not where you want to be. There's no shot to be the number one team in the country. You've had all this buildup about this great team you've assembled, and it's come down to the same thing, time and time again. Can you beat Michigan? Can you put them away? And you had a Michigan team that had 62 passing yards, had 2 interceptions, could not throw the ball, has one hand tied behind their back, essentially, did not have their best player on defense in Will Johnson, did not have their best player on offense as well, and you still could only score 10 points and get beat 13-10? And then we've got to talk about the brawl after the game. How soft do you have to be that irritated about the other team planting their flag on your field that you're willing to start this massive fight where police have to be involved and do all this other stuff. And I get, it's a pride thing. Show the pride during the game then. Don't throw the ball directly at someone's face if you're Will Howard and go, oh, I'm just going to launch it right at the Michigan guy. Surely nothing bad will come from this. Where's the passion? Where's anything that Ohio State football is all about that we've seen, at least in my lifetime? Granted, I'm a young man, but still, I've been used to Ohio State. They come in, they destroy you or blow you up in some way, and then they go. That's what Urban Meyer teams were about. That's what Ryan Day teams should be about. But Ryan Day has not shown me anything over even this year, that shows that he's that impressive. If you're Ohio State, and I know this is, you could say this is reactionary, you better have a plan in place, because you should fire Ryan Day the second he loses the playoff game, which he will. Ohio State's not winning anything this year. If they do, I'll be stunned. Because after the fight here, I'd heard that there were fights in the locker room after the game. And Ryan Day, the thing that stood out to me the most, and I'd like to believe Ryan Day is a good person. I'd love to believe that. But when you're watching your team get into a giant brawl like this, and Sharon Moore's in there, Michigan staff and Ohio State staff are trying to do stuff, and you're watching Jack Sawyer get into a fight with people 5 feet away from you, and you have the deer in the headlights look. That's a sign of a guy that has no clue what he is doing on that field in that moment. I get being in shock that your amazing high-powered offense scored 10 points against a 7-5 Michigan team, but this is just unacceptable for Ohio State. I'm sorry. He has to be gone.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it earlier. They are, right next to Alabama, I would say. Sure, maybe don't have the titles, but if you talk outside of Alabama, outside of Georgia, they are the premier blue blood, and you're getting overtaken by Michigan in a game where you shouldn't. You're getting beat up by Michigan when they're having just an absolute dumps of a season. There's nothing going for them. And you said it proper. You want to fight after the game because you're upset about playing the flag. Hey, I get it. It's not the best look for somebody to plant the flag. It's not maybe the best sportsmanship. But like you said, where's the passion? And this is why, for me, as far as fraud of the week, it's not Ohio State as a whole. It is solely on Ryan Day. He is the fraud, because there should be zero excuse with the opportunity they had at hand that you don't have your team fired up to go in there and kick the ever-living snot out of Michigan.
I mean,
You're at home.
Yeah.
You've had. It's all on him.
How much build up? You would not think, we'll put this in the perspective, of us being Oklahoma fans. If we were 1-3 against Texas in the last 4 years, and Texas was walking into the Cotton Bowl at like 1-4 or 2-3, and Oklahoma was the number 1 or number 2 team in the country, OU's a 20-point favorite, I would expect Oklahoma to try to win that game by as many points as possible. I would expect the entire OU side of the Cotton Bowl would be mad if they were only up by 49, because they'd wanted to run up the score that much. And I know Ohio State fans are built the same way. I know they're wired the exact same way. They're one of the top 3 programs in college football history, and I don't think they're number 3. It's one of those, they are one of the greatest programs this sport has to offer. And to just get pounded like that, to get slapped in the face like that by a Michigan team that can't do anything offensively other than run the ball well, which, to be fair, they do well. That's just embarrassing. That's just embarrassing. That's on Ryan Day. That's on this coaching staff. The fans are mad, angry, depressed, whatever emotion you want to tie to them. I completely get it. I completely get where that's coming from for Ohio State fans. It's just, you've got to have a plan. This guy cannot be the coach of your team next year, unless you want to lose to Michigan again, because it's going to continue to happen, I feel like.
Well, unfortunately, probably to be without championships, right? Because like I said, it doesn't seem like this Ohio State team is destined for anything in the playoffs other than, okay, maybe you win a first-round game, but that's it.
Yeah.
And that's questionable.
And depending on their draw, they might lose. If they get the right team, they might get run out of their own stadium. I think it's fair to say that.
He's just, he's not the guy. I mean, he's just not the guy. And it's crazy because if you put down his resume, just blind and say, hey, we're going to give you a coach that has this resume, pretty much almost every program in the country would say, give me that guy 11 times out of 10. But special case, like we said, this is Ohio State. The bar is different. Fair or not, you got to perform, man. You got to perform. That's just the nature of the beast.
Absolutely. And the other team I have for fraud alert this week is Tulane. And I don't like putting Tulane here because I respect Tulane a lot. I enjoy. There's a reason I have their helmet on one of my walls in this house. I love their program. I love what they've been about the last few years. But man, you have everything in front of you on Thanksgiving night. You have an opportunity to stay alive in the playoff race. Keep in mind, if things would have bounced the right way, they might have been able to take the Big 12 champion spot. We just had to get 2 wins to go your way. You're still playing to host the American Conference Championship game, and you let Memphis come in and not just beat you. Yes, you can look at the score and say 34-24. It wasn't that bad.
No.
Memphis was just absolutely taking it to them for most of this game. I mean, this was just Memphis's day. And Memphis, good team, great team even. 10-2. They're going to have another phenomenal season. Love seeing what the Tigers are doing. But if you're Tulane, this is just, I don't want to say embarrassing, but it feels like it for Tulane. You're still going to play for the conference title, but now you've got to go up to West Point. You've got to play Army, who will be jacked up on Friday night to play that game. And if they lose that game, it's just going to be what a disappointment for the season, which is crazy to say, but 9-4 is kind of a disappointment with what this Tulane team had put in front of them.
Yeah, that's a gut punch. I mean, that's, like I said, maybe not quite a full on disappointment, but feels like it, at the very least, a heavy gut punch just because you had that chance. You were going to be able to make at least an argument, and it kind of just goes away and you fade. These moments important in modern day college football because we talk about again, kids are, hey, what have you done for me lately? Right? You'll see it. I mean, today, Oklahoma season ends, loss wasn't great Saturday, and you lose a commitment. You guy goes into the transfer portal because there's not much there, right? That's how the kid looks at it. So for Tulane, it all kind of, I wouldn't say negates itself, but it's just not reaching that potential you need it to when you're a program like that and you can use every bit of help to be in the forefront.
Absolutely. It's just one of those where if you're Tulane, I cannot think of a more disastrous way to end the season than it would be to go lose to Army. It's just, and that's, again, seems crazy to say that a 9-4 season would be bad for Tulane, but with all the momentum they've had their way the past few years, it's still going to be a wild ride down in New Orleans. And now you got to worry about if Coach Summerall's going to leave, your offensive coordinator Joe Craddock, if Mensah, your quarterback, gets taken in the portal, if he goes somewhere with someone. This could be, Tulane getting stripped apart for parts here.
Yeah, and that would be tough. And Mensah, I mean, regardless of how this season finishes, I promise you, there's going to be a lot of people chirping at him in the portal. It's coming.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's deserved because he's been good most of the year. But is time?
Well, yeah, his youth, right? I mean, that's the other big part of it.
Exactly.
He's a guy that you could build an offense around.
Exactly. But it's finally time to take a look at the bracketology a little bit for the college football playoff rankings, the AP poll on the screen, what it has to offer. And for the most part, it's exactly what you'd think it would be. Ohio State fell 5 spots down to number 7. I would make the argument you should put SMU over personally, but that's just me. I think SMU has the ability to. Just 11-1. They've had some good moments here and there. Just that Michigan loss sticks out a little bit too much for me, maybe for Ohio State. But then again, still kind of splitting hairs there. Who's 7, who's 8? And then Miami falling down to 14, going below both Alabama and South Carolina, but not Ole Miss. Miami staying in front of Ole Miss, a little bit interesting there. Arizona State at 12, South Carolina 13, Alabama 11. Interesting to see that the AP poll finds a way to split Arizona State in there, kind of compared to what the rankings had, where all the SEC teams were grouped together. And then Clemson down to 18. Clemson dropping 6 spots for losing by 3 to South Carolina, and Miami dropping 6 for losing by 4 on the road at Syracuse. Interesting to see that they both get the same level of drop there, but Also, Syracuse jumping into the poll, well-deserved. Memphis, welcome. They deserve to be ranked as well.
Yeah, it's kind of another one of those weeks where I don't see too much that I disagree with. I don't think Ohio State should slip. You know, it's tough to say. I mean, it's a bad loss, but
It is.
when you get down to where they're at, you're going to make some cases like splitting hairs. You could argue that this team or this team should be ahead of them. I don't think it's that serious because at the end of the day, they're going to make the playoff and probably still be able to go beat some of these teams, depending on how the mood is in the locker room. So I do find it hilarious that despite all odds, again, you go back to early part of the season, there was no worse loss than Notre Dame had to NIU, and here they are, top 4 in the AP. It's just been that kind of year.
And keep in mind, if 2 or 3 voters vote different, they would have been number 3. Only 5 points separating them between Notre Dame and Penn State. It's crazy that, that loss seemed catastrophic at the time. I remember we were both talking about that at the OU game, thinking, man, what is Notre Dame going to do now? The answer is they're not going to lose. That's the answer.
Yep, just went about their business. And again, that's when you got, kind of humans deciding things. It's not all down to a computer. Yeah, you could argue, well, that loss should count for some, but the win against A&M counts, and just the way they've looked, the eye test has been passed ever since that loss to NIU.
It has, and it'll be intriguing to see where the rankings come out on Tuesday night, how similar they stay to the AP poll. For the most part, they've been pretty similar, but of course, we will have to see. But on to the best of the rest, the other games that you might have missed, and I feel bad saying that because usually that is true for this segment. This is not the week where that happens because the first game we're going to talk about could have been on Games of the Week. Any other week it probably would have been, and you could make the argument it should have been anyway this week. I just try to limit myself to 5, and there was enough ranked chaos that went on. Georgia and Georgia Tech. Maybe the game of the year, Tyler. 8 overtimes between Georgia Tech and Georgia. It took forever to figure this thing out. It started on Friday night. It ended Saturday morning on the East Coast. The win probability chart shows you everything. Just up and down and up and down, 90% flipping back and forth. Georgia Tech had a 17-0 lead in this game going into the locker room, and then it still looked like Georgia Tech was going to put it away with 5 minutes left, up 27-13. It looked like, oh my goodness, is this going to happen again? Bad Georgia shows up to play yet again, but all the Dogs needed was 5 minutes to get back into this thing, to force overtime, and then the race was on at that point. Your touchdowns, your 2-point tries, your more 2-point tries, your even more 2-point tries, and maybe even another round of 2-point tries. But we finally determined a winner. Please fix that overtime system. It is so annoying. Go back to what we had. It was so much better. That's
player safety, Cade.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah. I would rather have a field goal shootout than the alternating 2-point tries, personally. If we're going to go that way, I would say...
Oh, that'd be real spicy.
Could you imagine? My ideal for that...
All those poor kickers.
My ideal for that would be you'd start with a 25-yarder and go back 5 yards after that. So, after the 4th kick, it would start getting really spicy of oh, man, if this kid shakes a 40-yarder, I'm going to feel so bad for him. But Georgia Tech,
too much on the kicker there.
Yeah, God, but hey, that's why you got them. Special teams are important. You make them important. That's what overtime would be for. But Georgia Tech, 37 minutes, time of possession. Georgia Tech really did dominate the majority of this game. I mean, for 3.5 quarters, they looked like the better team. They looked like the more physical team. Even Kirby Smart said so. What Brent Key is going to continue to build at Georgia Tech will be nothing short of impressive. He talked about how much this game meant to him, how he really wanted to beat Georgia bad, and he just couldn't get it done. And not him personally. Georgia Tech just simply ran out of gas, and someone had to in this game. When you go that long, people get exhausted going back and forth on opposite ends of the field, going for 2. But I do find it funny because I saw a lot of people saying, hey, Georgia Tech, just run the ball. That's your identity. Run the ball in overtime. What are you doing? And that's how the game ended, with Georgia. A simple run play got them the win.
Yeah, and credit to the dogs for showing that fight, but it illustrates exactly what we've been talking about, that Jekyll and Hyde nature. There's times where when Feinbaum's sitting there yelling, "Oh, the SEC so tough this year. Georgia belongs to be in the top five." Boy, you go back and watch that film. There's times that Georgia, I don't think, belongs in the American Conference this year. It's bad.
No,
But when they turn it on, they still got a little bit of that potential from, we see it and go, "Oh, okay, this is a national championship type team."
exact. And that's the thing that I don't understand with this Georgia team at all. I don't get where that Jekyll and Hyde comes from. And this is a game where, usually it's a half. We saw that many times. The Tennessee game is a perfect example of that. One half you play great, one half you looked okay. Saw that even against UMass. One half you looked not very good, at least defensively. Offensively, you were fine. And then you clean things up in the second half. Texas game, you played 3 amazing quarters and 1 really bad quarter. I've never seen it where Georgia looked bad for 3.5 quarters and then played 5 good minutes. And that was enough. That was enough to drag it to overtime, and they took it from there. This was a game that I don't think I can really say negative about either side, though, because it was just such a fun game. I mean, this was just, on the edge of your seat style entertainment.
Yeah, it's one of those games where you go, man, it's unfortunate somebody's got to lose this one because both teams at times did some really crazy things. They played well, and yeah, kudos to Georgia Tech, man. I think Brickey, as long as he doesn't get scooped away somewhere, he might have them kind of on the up and up. In the ACC, again, they're one of the conferences where it's not just a de facto team at the top. Yeah, Clemson's been that at times, but you've seen cracks in the armor, over the last couple of years. And boy, Georgia Tech with that performance, I think you did win, but you sent a message that they're a team that is tough to beat, and you're going to have to earn it.
Yeah, I mean, Haynes King, just talk about a warrior. Just, you could tell he was hurt, played through it, kept battling, had to run it 24 times, threw it 36 times. That's unusual for Georgia Tech to have to throw it that much. But just the way they played was so inspiring. Just to go out there and just continue to play their type of football the entire game and just control how this game was going to get played. Georgia doesn't get into situations like that often. Again, credit to Georgia for finding a way to eventually win it in overtime. Someone had to. They came up with it. And I know a lot of people were extremely mad about the calls in this game on Friday night. They kind of faded away over the weekend as everything else played out. And some of it I could understand the gripes with. But at the same time, this is going to sound really bad to say. Unfortunately, that is part of the game. And I hate saying
Oh,
that, but bad calls are going to happen. You could argue that, I saw people trying to run with this is the most rigged game in college football history. No, it's not. This is not 0-2 Kings Lakers level of rigged or something like that. Or it's just, I understand where people want to find their narrative there. People kept getting mad at Joe Testore and the commentator crew about, stop saying Georgia is in the college football playoff with a win, undefeated at home, senior clad, da 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 da. And I want to take a moment to talk about that from the broadcasting side. Because when you go 8 overtimes, Tyler, you would know this better than me. You've broadcasted longer than I have. I would assume you would not have any notes on what to do at that point if you're trying to fill 5 minutes of airtime like they would have to. Because keep in mind, you have the commercial break, and then you come back, and then you still have another minute or two before the overtime play gets started, and you've got to go do it all over again and wait for them to get to the other side, wait to get reset up, and then the one play. It's a lot of dead air you have to fill.
and I think the best you could do in that moment, regardless of what's going on as far as around the country, which you're on a Friday night, so it's not like you had games to look at to say, hey, here's what's going on across the country and how could this affect this. You just got to tell the story, the atmosphere of the game. And I thought, for the most part, that was captured pretty well. Uh, because that's what it's about. This turn. I mean, we go to that many overtimes. This has turned into a heavyweight fight. Everybody's tired. People on the edge of their seats at home watch. I mean, there's a lot, with that. So I think the best thing you can do is definitely try to make sure you're capturing the atmosphere of the moment because it was historic. I mean, it was everything you'd want from a game like that, a rivalry game. And even if people don't want to hear it, Georgia persevering like that is absolutely the story of the game.
Absolutely.
And you got to tell it. So it's not
They
biased; it's part of it.
exactly. The only thing I was disappointed in this game is it couldn't break the record for the most overtimes in a game. I
Yeah, I
kind
thought
of
we were
wanted
gonna
to
get it
see it to
because it
get
was
the
a lot better game than the game
yeah.
that had the record.
This is the best game that went to at least 8 overtimes in college football history. We can at least guarantee
Yeah.
that. It's a lot better than whatever that Penn State Illinois game was. I just wanted to see it hit double digits to say I've seen a game go 10 overtimes. College football's so great. No other sport would ever do this, but here we are. But we got close. And sometimes that's all that matters. You get close.
Absolutely. Great game. Great game.
Yeah, great game. But the next one to get to, also a good game. Nowhere near as good as that. You're not going to top an 8 overtime game. These are going to kind of not devolve, but Notre Dame and USC. I mean, what a battle this was. The battle for the jeweled shillelagh, if you will. I hope I said that right. I am not the greatest when it comes to some of these names, but you look at a. Yeah, okay, good. I remembered NCAA football trophies correctly. But you look at this game and 2 turnovers apiece, time of possession about the same. USC had 100 more yards than Notre Dame, and this is a good example sometimes of that is a good stat to tell the story of certain games. Sometimes it's not because Notre Dame, 2 pick sixes in the fourth quarter of 99 yards and 100 yards that just took this thing away from USC. No chance after that. Goes from 35-28 to 49-28 and a high-powered Lincoln Riley offense that has had so much not really go wrong, but just a lot of unluckiness. Finally, a game where the Trojans did not lead in the fourth quarter, and they fought very hard, but Notre Dame just continues to roll through people.
Yeah, they do. And this was a great test for them because, USC obviously was clear that, hey, we got to put everything we got into this one. It's kind of that last chance to make a splash on the season. And for the most part, did about as good of a job as anybody else has this season outside of Northern Illinois, crazy to say, to really put Notre Dame on the ropes. But man, that defense, you mentioned the 2 pick sixes, clutch right there, right? I mean, that is huge. And they were in big spots. And it was because their defense had put some pressure on that USC offense, kind of made them predictable in those moments. And just big time plays by big time players. So that was fun to watch. That delivered. And then on top of that, yeah, a little heartbreaking for USC, but you could take some things for it and say, look, this is the team we can be. Now, whether USC fans are willing to give Lincoln Riley another year, that's a different question.
Unless they want to find a way to spend like $90 million and,
unless they want to do the Jimbo special,
unless you want a Jimbo style buyout, or you get lucky that somehow Lincoln wants to reunite with Caleb Williams in Chicago. You got to keep your fingers crossed if you're a USC fan. Say, please, Lord, let that happen. But USC, and I mean, this is a tale as old as time. We've seen this how many times now with Lincoln Riley teams. When you play a physical team that is going to hit you hard, that is going to run the ball well, it is going to cause problems. If they could force turnovers, that's going to make things even worse. That's what happened to USC. That's what happens to Lincoln Riley a lot. Was not able to get the job done. USC starting to go in reverse, and more people just not excited about Lincoln Riley football anymore. It's crazy to see that we've seen this story play out all the way through, but it's where we're at now.
Well, you go from, boy genius, hey, this guy's future college football, to you hear about, maybe not the best with the media. He's a little standoffish about if he doesn't get his way. You can't rule with an iron fist if you don't have the success to back it up. And you can legitimately say, hey, he might have underachieved with Caleb Williams. Yeah, he got a Heisman out of it, but you should be competing for a national title with a quarterback like that. And they weren't ever close to that. And so you start to question, okay, is this guy made of the right stuff to be a head coach? Great offensive mind. Is he the right guy to actually be a head coach? So, another kind of drop in that bucket, unfortunately, for him here.
Yeah, and you look at what Notre Dame was able to do. 7 yards a carry, 3 rushing touchdowns, 260. Just talking about bullying people. That's what Notre Dame's done well all year. Good defense and just being able to bully people. Had their biggest challenge in a while. And like you said, this is a good test for them. This is the best offense they've seen in a while. They needed a game like this to kind of, okay, a good wind up for what the playoffs are going to be. This is going to be that type of intensity. That's how it's going to be. But I'm excited to see how Notre Dame plays at home in a playoff game. It's going to be cold up there, Tyler. It's going to be fun. They showed the difference in the weather between the games where it's like, hey, it's sunny, California, Los Angeles too. Oh, meanwhile, if this game was in South Bend right now, it's 20 degrees and snowing. So I hope we get that weather in a few weeks. I'm sorry if you're going to be at that game, but I hope it's cold and snowy then too.
Of course, that's great playoff atmosphere.
That's football weather, Tyler. I'm sorry. I'm going to keep harping on it, mainly because Buffalo had their snow game today, and it made me think about how many fun snow games there have been. But, one more game to get to. The Iron Bowl, wrapping everything up, because this was an Iron Bowl to forget if you're an Auburn fan. You come into this game knowing you probably have a game plan to beat Alabama. If you've seen Vanderbilt and Oklahoma run essentially the same type of a style of offense to beat Alabama. And Auburn said, we don't want to do that. Jarquez Hunter, you would think he would have been a major part of the game plan. He had 13 carries. Hugh Freeze said, by God, we're going to make Peyton Thorne win this game whether he wants to or not. And he cannot get it done. And Alabama turned the ball over 4 times in this game, but still controlled time of possession. Jalen Milroe looked a lot more like the Jalen Milroe we expect to see. This was a funky game with a few fights in it. I still know how Alabama got both penalties when that first fight broke out, but hey, that's the call for the refs to make and for me to question, but that's how that works sometimes.
Right.
It looked like Auburn was going to get back into the game, and then just one of the dumber trick plays you could see of just throwing it into triple coverage and shorting it, where you hit a guy above the coverage, but you underthrow it, and that essentially killed the game. Time of death early in the fourth quarter. Alabama able to just start to run that clock out. And the Tide, they just need a few more things to go their way, and they might sneak into this college football playoff, much to the chagrin of everybody else.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. You're going to hear some complaints about that, but it's a year where chaos has happened, and here's the thing with that. Even if Alabama makes the playoff, here's the secret. They ain't good enough to go win a title this year. They're just not, That's kind of the deal. They're not really good enough. So not like you're going to see Bama carry home some crown.
Yeah, they don't have Jalen Milroe cannot carry them to a title. This is not basketball where you can get away with one guy carrying an entire team to victory. You do have to have all 22 guys who are studs out there to get the job done in this era.
Yeah, you do. So don't freak out. They're not going to, even if they get in, they ain't going super far, I promise.
Yeah, but it's one that this game confused me a lot. And this is mainly Hugh Freeze, where, Tyler, I kid you not, we could have been the co-offensive coordinators in this game, and we would have had a better game plan. Because we saw it happen in front of us last week. You got to run the ball. That's how you beat Alabama. You run the ball and shorten the game. And Auburn, time and time again, just refused to do it. And I did not understand, is Hugh Freeze trying to get fired? Does he not want to coach anymore? That might be a serious question. I don't know.
It was mystifying because, like you said, Oklahoma laid out the game plan. Go be physical. Go move them off the line of scrimmage with that run game. And you're probably going to have a good shot. And they just refused to do it for whatever reason.
I mean, it was just seeing Auburn fans melt down. The amount of times I saw run the expletive ball in all caps, no matter where I went, and Alabama fans just laughing at Auburn, being like, these guys don't even know to run the ball. This is incredible. They don't know our one weakness. This is awesome. The Alabama fans are just laughing at, I can't believe these people are that dumb. I can't believe this coaching staff doesn't know how to beat us. And Jalen Milroe, talked about, played a lot better. 256 through the air, was a lot more accurate, did have the one interception, had some fumbles. The turnovers starting to become a bit of a concern, even more so, but he still looked well running it. This was the Jalen Milroe we expected to see. And Jam Miller, 28 carries, a lot of that Alabama just trying to run this game down. Let's get out of here. He played well. Yeah, only 3 yards a carry. But sometimes your goal is not to break off those big runs. Your goal is just to keep that time moving.
Yeah, and find a way to get positive yards. That's something to be said for running back.
Yeah.
And I think for Milrow, what's going to be interesting is when you really dig into his legacy after this. I think it's clear he's a talented quarterback. Another one of a long lineage now we've seen of Alabama quarterbacks in the modern age be super talented. But what's his legacy? Because it always seemed like a guy where either he didn't quite match up in that big moment a lot of times. He had some good ones, but maybe not to the extent that you would want. But the team fell at times too. I don't know. He's going to have kind of a weird legacy, I think, with Alabama.
Yeah.
Having it, great quarterback, but where does he fall in the annals of a Tua, of a Jalen? Some of those more recent guys have been just really put Alabama over the top. Even a Greg McElroy, if you go back a bit.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be kind of a weird comp. He feels like a worse version of Bryce Young in terms of that. If you remember those Bryce Young Alabama teams a few years ago, it felt like if he did not put the team on his back, Alabama was going to lose. It was just going to happen. That 2022 season where Alabama goes on the road and okay, if Bryce Young does not play a perfect game, Alabama's going to fall apart at some point. They're going to make some mistakes. You're going to have to deal with it. Jalen Milrow feels like that too, where he's not as good of a passer as Young. He has the ability to be explosive enough that he could just beat you with his legs and say, you know what, it doesn't matter. I'm going to go run for 50 yards. See y'all later. I'm going to the end zone. But it feels like if you can get him off his game a little bit, he doesn't adapt to it as well as Young does, where it's just kind of, okay, if bad Jalen Milrow shows up, that's just the game. You can just call it right now. There's no hope of praying that it gets better, and especially if Ryan Williams gets stopped in any way, shape, or form, then Alabama being a two-man show does not work well. And Greg McElroy talked about this a little bit. I thought his thoughts on it were interesting, where he said Alabama's almost too quarterback-driven now, too quarterback-centric, where it's one guy should not be controlling the entire offense. You should have, other guys that can step up. Your running back should be able to handle things on his own at times, or just get the ball to your playmakers, really, whether it be offense or even defense, where they can just step up, make the play. You don't need the quarterback to do everything. I think it'll be interesting to see if DeBoer wants to go away with that, or if he wants to just try to get his guy in like a Michael Penix, that it's still that same kind of idea, but it's just a lot more focused on throwing it and a lot less QB run game we're having to see here.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see that, because I think Penix was a really good match for what DeBoer wanted to do at Washington. That was clear. They just didn't have kind of the resources to get all the talent around him to match that. They had some good talent, but not enough to go win a title. So you'd figure DeBoer now is going to have that chance to kind of look back and say, okay, how can we mold this program back into the right direction? Because I think this kind of appeared even in the last, year or Saban, where things were just not heading in the right direction for Bama. New age college football, they weren't quite as swift as adapting as maybe they should have. So people will tell you that's not the case, and that Kalen Moore's bad coach, but I don't fully believe that yet. So willing to at least give him the offseason and see what he tinker with and figure out.
Yeah, he has not built up the bad will of the Ryan Days of the world, where you feel like now if he loses to Auburn 3 years in a row, we might be in a different story. But
I think he's got to show some difference next year, because I don't think Bama fans are going to be patient enough for him to kind of have an okay year next year, similar to this one, where they're good, but they're not the cream of the SEC. You better be right there contending, I think, next year.
Exactly. What world would we be in if Alabama goes 9-3 or 8-4 again next year? Not that I think it'll happen, but I mean, what crazy world would we be living in where Bama fans would have thrown their coach out after 2 years? That'd be crazy times to live in. I don't think we're going to be there. Alabama's going to be, as weird as it is to say, a story to kind of keep your eye on for next year, how they readjust and do, but that's the beauty of this thing sometimes. You get weird results that happen. If you would have told me Alabama was going to turn it over 4 times and only score 28, including 0 points in the fourth quarter, I would have said, oh man, we might have had another Iron Bowl upset in the making. But it just did not happen.
Nope.
But anyway, folks, that will wrap things up here for week 14 of the college football season. It was kind of sad going through the Hawaii game one last time and seeing the clock hit zeros. Officially December, Central Time Zone where we are. I just kind of think, the regular season is done once again. So much optimism I had back in August that things would be good this year, and then they still were for college football, just not for my specific team, as we've talked about many times on this show. But it's always one of those, you're glad that the playoffs are about to be here. Conference championship week will be fun, but there's always something kind of sad about seeing that regular season come to an end.
Yeah, it means that you're going to have to wait a while before you see college football again. And like I said, it goes by so fast. It really does. It's kind of unfair, but here we are yet again.
Here we are yet again. But folks, as always, the season is not done yet. It is nowhere close. We've still got 2 more months to go of this thing. So if you want to stick around for the ride, feel free to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell to always be notified when new episodes come out, and to leave a comment down below. Trust me on this when I do say this. We do want people to be a part of this thing. We do, react to the comments and read them and see and do. We'll mention them. If you make a point that, agreement or disagreement with us, we're happy to bring it up. We're happy to get involved and do all that. Once again, trying to hit that 100 subscriber mark before the end of the year. Only got 30 days to get 6 people to subscribe. Most people who watch these are not subscribed. So it would sincerely mean a lot, especially if you made it this far. I would hope you would have enjoyed the video to sit through the hour 21 of this that you've already sat through. But folks, it's been so much fun doing this. It will continue to be fun doing this. And until next time, have a good one, everybody.